Enjoy the greatest travel thrill yet, the new bi-level 400s. Oh, hello there, I didn't see you. I was looking at this book of Chicago Northwestern official color photography. I'm standing here in front of the Mystic Talking Station, and to your right is the engine that is the subject of today's story. See, this was my grandfather's engine, and it actually had a very quiet life. My grandfather passed away in 2017. It is to him that I am dedicating this video and my 3/16 scale American Flyer Railroad. My grandparents were married in 1950. Then right away, Grandpa got a job working for the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad out of Antigo, Wisconsin, hand-firing steam locomotives. Later, the railroad moved them to Green Bay, Wisconsin, again firing steam engines, and later he became certified to operate diesel locomotives. Often he was required to run on Sundays, but if it was a diesel, well, that was an easy job, and much cleaner too. Another easy job was the 2900 series steam engines. Firing those was less work, since those engines had a stoker. On one occasion, he made a Christmas Day run to Milwaukee, and his wife and kids went along for the ride. Before the return trip, Grandpa was going to let them know when to board, but had to rush to the engine and never knew if his family was on the train. But Grandma heard the boarding call, and they were all back home that evening. Back in those days, being a railroad engineer was a very sought-after position, and some would even say glamorous. Of course, that was long before I was around, and the only way I can remember it is through old pictures and movies, and the model trains like this one. Here I am on the 332. This particular locomotive was manufactured in 1948. Sometime between 1948 and 50 was when my grandpa bought this engine, which is probably part of a set. Very little is known about his trains except for what my uncle remembers as a kid. There are no pictures of his trains, so I am filling in some of the details which should help the story make more sense. Now, from what I could find out, Grandpa owned at least one train set before he and Grandma were married. Very soon after that, he set up a loop of track on the kitchen table. Well, sure enough, an engine tipped over and tore a hole in Grandma's brand new plastic tablecloth. Which engine it was is unknown, but I'd like to think it was this one. However, sometime in its life, it is believed that this engine fell to the ground and was permanently damaged. It never ran after that, packed away for good. Grandpa did have other American Flyer trains, from what my uncle can remember. He had 2 steam engines, a Silver Bullet, and one other engine. They were named Bullet Nose and Blackie. Appropriate, I think. Since my grandfather worked for the Chicago Northwestern, I believe that the second engine would have been one of the 280 series, since those were modeled after C&W prototypes. Both of these engines came out after 1954. Grandpa never cared much for diesels and never owned any of them. I do know that he had one of these walking brake van cars, as well as a set of the red Pullman coaches. He also had a tube-rectified transformer, which was required to operate the electronic propulsion motor in the 332. The rest of his collection will forever be a mystery. So what about the 332? Well, like I said, not much is known about it. Once, my uncle discovered the engine tucked away in the back rafters in its original wrapper. Then what? Grandpa bought a lakefront cottage up north and the locomotive moved up there on a small display track. It was set on the fireplace as a mantel decoration. I have found only 2 pictures of it there, where it sat for over 40 years till the cottage was sold. Then it lived at my grandparents' house, then to my uncle's house, then finally to me, where I determined to have it restored to operating condition. I sold my handful of Lionel trains to pay for the repairs. A friend of my grandfather, who owned the Green Bay train shop, did the repair work. This was done before I learned the art of repairing American Flyer myself. Shortly thereafter, I bought my first American Flyer set so that I had some track to run it on. Now it is the premier piece in my American Flyer collection and it will be the one thing I never get rid of. This engine is why I started collecting American Flyer. If you watch my other videos, you know that I also have HO trains. Trains are in my blood, but American Flyer is part of my family. Thank you, Grandpa.